Hello, my name is Ryan Peel, and this is a little mechanical showcase and breakdown for my latest project, Windshire Peak. I wanted to place a large focus on player movement as something I really enjoy, so I was able to build a grapple hook that kind of feels similar to what I feel like a Spider-Man swing would feel like. Red crystals for the player to collect. The grapple was kind of based off of a story about my uncle. If you have ever heard about that game, kind of have like a magical, like flying grapple thing. Um, there's dead bodies scattered throughout the level that you can collect from. If you pick up a match from one of them, light this fire. And then at the end of the level, all of those mechanics kind of culminate into a score sheet that gets calculated. Um, Obviously, I just wasn't fast enough this time. Um, so to break it down, a lot of what's happening inside of the game is worked through the player. So I thought the best place to start would be to start at the begin play event. So most of this code is setting a safe location. Something I actually didn't showcase here is that this big volume out in the void, if I wait here for say 2 seconds and then jump off, it's going to reset me back to a safe location. Um, but if I kind of swing around for a little while, you know, fly around, all of that, and then fall, it's going to reset me back to the last point that I was standing. So that's what this code is doing. Begin play fires off a function that saves your last safe location. It asks if the player is falling, and if they aren't, get that location for wherever the player is, and set that as a variable. And then at the end of that function, after you wait for 2 seconds, uh, just run that function again. Um, you can see in here, I got it open. Uh, Whenever you overlap with that volume, if you're the first person character, we just set your location back to this variable. Something really easy. Um, the next thing that happens is getting the time in seconds. This is just for data gathering for the end of the level. We get a tag for ignored actors. That's just to assist for the grapple points as well as interacts. You'll see that more in use later. And setting up the HUD, those controls that you see in the top left corner. Because you can't really assume that a player is going to understand everything. For our interact events, the first thing we need to look at is over here. There is on move forward, so a tick event, a function running called check interact. It's a sphere trace that is constantly running based off of the player's camera. You'll see this block of code copied a lot throughout this first person character. We save the hit actor so that we can throw it into the HUD later. I'm not going to be showcasing the HUD in this video though. And then when we press E, we do that same trace. And if that is a good actor, we send that actor into the interact event itself. That interact is a message that gets sent over a interface to things like the did guy. When interact events, we ask if you can interact, and if you can, uh, we'll take that first person character and send a message through the um, event dispatcher that is there. So for the dead guy, we have the interact to collect. We collect the value. If we can interact first, we check that, collect the value, and then if they have a match, we'd say that the player has gained a match. We do a similar thing for the red crystal, except you don't have to actively interact with it. It's just on begin overlap. Send that message, say that the number of crystals is up, and when you reset through the death warp, you have that died event, and then get time in seconds, getting the playtime, rounding it up, because I don't want like milliseconds on that final data screen. The bulk of the mechanical programming comes from the fire event. Here, we get that player viewpoint, get a rotator, and do a multi-sphere trace by channel, and set actors to ignore to all ignored actors. If you remember up here, we get all actors of tag ignore, and set that to an array of actors to ignore. I just went into the level and selected all blocks that the player cannot interact with, they just walk on, or things for aesthetic purposes, and I gave them all the tag ignore. So that when the player clicks to shoot for their tether, they're not getting blocked by pieces of the terrain, as that was a problem before. And for each of them, each of the actors that we hit, we ask if it's valid, make sure that it's not the player themselves. Do they have the tag grapple? And if they do, we set that the player is grappled, make it so that the cable that the player has on them is visible, and then we change the player's movement values a little bit just to make it, I wanted it to feel more like a story about my uncle, where you get pulled directly to it. It didn't work exactly because I didn't change the velocity here of the player. So if you're already moving in a sideward motion, then you continue that motion. And then we open a gate on a tick timeline. It's an autoplay looping, so it's a tick event. And all we do is we set that cable's end location to make it look like the player is attached to something, and we constantly on tick apply that force of the direction to that grapple point. It's set to this value after some testing. Higher was too fast, lower you were being affected by gravity too much. So this is a very nice sweet spot for the feel I was going for. And then when you release, we untoggle, we check if you're grappled first, because I didn't want you to release and then lose all of your speed if you're just like falling. We set your velocity to half of what it is because I didn't want players flinging themselves like Spider-Man. I just wanted them to be able to go to the grapple point. And we reset your movement back to its original values. Say that you're no longer grappled and toggle that visibility. And then finally close the gate. And that is everything for the mechanical discussion. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a nice day.